But today I just wanted to share, a little bit of my story and what this head trash exactly is. So you heard a little bit of my intro that I had all these ailments, all these conditions, that life was just getting worse, from being hit by a van at age 6, which was the catalyst for everything. Because it really just, I spent like a year in the hospital, just got out of first grade and spent a year in the hospital after that. So that's where it all began with me. And I always had these mental issues growing up, that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't worthy, very depressed and not really fitting into society. So when I was suicidal in my 20s, I was diagnosed with bipolar, because I believed that voice in my head to be the truth, that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't worthy, that life is just too difficult. But so I went through that. And so I had a bipolar, then I had more diagnoses were coming, the migraines. I had chronic migraines, 2 to 3 migraines a week was pretty common, always in a state of migraine, of pain, frequently spending time at the ER in Doylestown. It was sort of like my home away from home. And then dealing with these migraines, because there was really no medicine at that time. So I usually had to get some IV medicines there. And then eventually the psoriasis, because psoriasis is an autoimmune disease. And I always had this self-hate. And this self-hate provided the fuel for the autoimmune diseases. So the psoriasis, which is that skin disease, got into my joints, which then became psoriatic arthritis. So I was going through all of this. Then at age 37, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And the way this came about was, one day I had the worst headache I ever had was at work. I managed to get myself home. And then a few days later, I just couldn't walk. I couldn't really see. I couldn't do anything. So this put me in the hospital for a few weeks, trying to figure out what I had. And they came to the conclusion that it was MS. So I was dealing with all of this, all my conditions, taking 13 medicines a day, an injectable, had my cane. This is my new way of being. And I always thought it was going to be this way. So I had no concept that I could heal myself. That was not part of my journey, that all of this could go away. Because we're constantly told that this is incurable, that you're always stuck with this, if you will. So basically, I read about meditation one day. And one of the benefits of meditation was inner peace. And I'm like, oh, I need this. I need inner peace. Because I was so stressed out, so overwhelmed with life, that I just needed some peace. That's all I wanted, was peace. But this was more like in a passing. It wasn't really like, this is how to meditate. So there's really no instructions on meditation. It's just meditation equals inner peace. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll meditate. So I just sat there, but I didn't really know what meditation was. I thought it meant stop thinking. So for the first few days, it was like mind thinking, stop thinking, mind thinking, stop thinking. It was really thoughts chasing thoughts. So then eventually it dawned on me, wait a second, I have these thoughts, but I'm not these thoughts. So it was my first glimpse into the reality that I'm not my thoughts. So the question came, if I wasn't my thoughts, then who am I? So I sat with that for about, I guess 4 weeks, 6 weeks. I was just sitting with that question, who am I? And then one day it just came to me, I'm perfect spirit. Like everyone here today is perfect spirit. But we get identified as the body, the mind. When we are beyond that, we are this beingness. So once I realized I was perfect spirit, the mind got pretty much quiet at that point. Even when it was really pretty quiet after realizing I wasn't my thoughts, the mind got pretty quiet. Then after what I heard perfect spirit, it was definitely like the mind was not in the picture anymore. I was really, at that point, I was starting to follow this intuitive voice to go do this, to go do that. Like this intuitive voice told me, go do yoga. And my mind would come up with all these stories that you can't do yoga, your balance is terrible, and just all these stories. Well, I ignored the mind because I was listening to myself at that point. So I did yoga, signed up for it. I was falling over a lot in the beginning, a lot of really tipsy. But after 6 months, I didn't need the cane anymore. And I was also weaning off all my medications, and everything was just coming back into balance. And I was really stopped seeing my doctors at that point as well, which I really don't recommend. That I was so in tune with spirit. I was marching to my own drummer. I was just withdrawing through everything. So within 16 months, I had no signs of disease, no medicine, no cane. The few doctors that I did see, like the neurologist for multiple sclerosis, he questioned me for 45 minutes trying to understand what I did. And my last exam, my scans were clean, my blood work was better than his, and he had no explanation, that it was just gone. So that was basically my story in a nutshell. It's a lot there, but that was basically my journey over 38 years, was feeling that I was stuck with these conditions and life was just getting worse. At this point, my MS was going from relapsed and remitting to secondary progressive, which means with relapsed and remitting was you have good days, you bad days, you just sort of cycle up and down all the time. And with secondary progressive, you're just on this constant decline. So according to their theories, I should be in a nursing home or in a wheelchair permanently by now. And I've been healthy for 10 plus years with no medicine, no nothing, because it's simply gone. Because spirit within all of us knows the way forward. When we get the mind completely out of the way and we just allow spirit to guide us, it knows our recipe, if you will. So I have some other stories as well that I can share as well. So a friend of mine called me up and said, hey, my friend Lisa's in the hospital. She has cancer. She's in really bad shape. Can you go visit her? So I did. So I went into Lisa's room. She was in really, really bad shape. I could see that she was just a few days from her transition. She was in really bad shape. So I sat with her for an hour and a half, and I just did my process, whatever that may be, which is basically just sitting quietly. So I just worked with her and just sat with her. And first thing I had to do was clear out that mental junk, if you will, that mental clutter that has all these stories. Because when we're diagnosed with something or take medicine, we usually read about it, we research, and we just fill the head with more stuff. So when I was sitting with Lisa initially for most of that time, was just getting rid of all that stuff that she had in her head. Then I just do what I do, and you'll see later today that I just get into this space where I just transmit. I don't know what this transmission is. I just transmit it, this grace, this divine intelligence, and it does what it needs to do. So Lisa continued to live for 5 more years. I saw her roughly about 2 years later, attending one of my talks, and she was, in fairly good health. She was no longer, I guess she was in a remission at that time, but she had cancer that metastasized throughout her whole body. She shouldn't be there, but she was there 2 years later in fairly good health. So she got to experience more of life for 5 years. Then I had a friend of mine, not a friend, but somebody that was been to my talks, knows a little bit about me, and she just called me one day, say, I'm really sleepy, I took all these pills. So I immediately called, help for her, and they took her to the hospital, but she's in Philadelphia. So I was like, okay, she's in Philadelphia. Let me go see what's going on. So I just took a guess, followed my intuition, like, oh, she's going to be at this hospital. So I managed to get from the desk that she was there. So then I just sat in a waiting room for about an hour, maybe a little more, and I was just sending her this energy, this grace, because there was no head trash to clear or anything. I was just going in there and just taking care of these toxins, if you will. So then I said, okay, I'm finished. So I went to the front desk, and they were giving more information than normally would have, because of, I don't know, they just thought, I guess I wasn't a threat or something. They just gave me more information than anything. But they just said to me when I was leaving, well, you can see her tomorrow. She'll be in the ICU. All right, well, I show up the next day. She's not in the ICU. She's in a normal hospital bedroom, like nothing happened. But I walk in the room and she's yelling at me. She's mad at me for calling help from her. But she had no signs that she took an overdose of all these pills and medicine, that it was done with it, because we have this intelligence, this divine intelligence within all of us, that it's not outside of us, that we all have this ability. We simply have to get the mental interference out of the way, this head trash. We really just need to pull that stuff out and really see who we really are. Because you have to realize the true us, that perfect spirit, this self, is already free. It's free already. But the thing is, the head trash binds us to the body, to the mind, and it creates that suffering because yourself, I'm this body, I'm this mind. And intellectually, we may know ourselves that the real me is spirit, but the mind's still going. It still has those attachments. And we just need to let all those attachments go. Because when I do meditation now, I saw before when I was doing my meetups in the area, there's really doing like guided meditations. And guided meditations are good, but they still have you doing this and that. They're still giving mental activity. And I really don't want mental activity because I was seeing when I don't have people doing mental activity and I just do the work, if you will, then there's profound transformations. Typically, when they're doing the work, the transformations aren't as profound. They happen on occasion, but they're not as profound because the mind is just so busy. So the whole point is to be quiet, to sit still, and really remember who we are, reveal the true self within us, which knows the way forward. It doesn't guess. It's one with everything. It's connected to all that is, because we are all that is. But the mind's constantly seeking. The answer has to be out there someplace. It has to be out there. So that's my journey for 38 years, going to all these doctors, was they have to have my answer. They have to have my solution, my cure. But it turned out to be, you know, when I stopped listening to them, if you will, and started to listen to myself and follow this intuitive voice, it knows the way forward. Then you might be asking, well, how do you know the intuitive voice versus the mental voice? Well, the intuitive voice is very direct. It says, do this, do that, with no explanations. The mind will say, do this because of these benefits, because of these results. And we just have to realize that spirit is always whispering to you to do this, to do that, but we can't hear it over the noise of the mind. So today, my objective, or my goal is, if you will, is just to release you from this mental nonsense, all this garbage that says you're not good enough, you're not worthy, really is identified with any ailments you may have, maybe any life conditions. Whatever these stories are, they are not your truth. Your truth is the silent witness within you, that you are the self, the perfect spirit, whatever you wish to call it. We don't want to get hung onto any labels. We want to surrender to everything and just be the embodiment of self, to let all this go and to reveal who we are, always at peace, always in a place of acceptance, full of love for everyone, not judgmental, not these stories that are holding us back. And it sounds very simple, and it is very simple, but the mind loves complexity. The mind thinks it has to be difficult. So I was fortunate to never have a spiritual teacher. They would have given me all these rules on how to meditate, how to do things, how to do this and that. And it's about stripping away all the routines, all the rituals, everything. Because people that come to me that want to deepen their spiritual practice, I see what they're doing, and I just want them to stop all of it, because it's not bringing them the true experience of self. It's mental activity. It's doing this and that. And we don't need to do any of this. We can just relax and just be, and that's enough. The mind's always dwelling in the past or future guessing. But all we know for certain is right here, right now. This is where all of our power resides. So if we can just relax, be at peace, be in this moment. That's all that's required of us. It all boils down to know thyself. Not the mental guessing of ourself, but actually having that direct experience. And this is why I really go for the non-dual approach, if you will, to have the direct experience where the mind is not busy, where you are quiet, and allow a true spiritual guide, if you will, a true spiritual teacher will do the work, whatever the work is in quotes. They're not going to have you doing this and that, rituals, routines, because in truth, you're one with all that is, that we're all interconnected, and we're all full of peace, of love, of joy. And it is this simple. We think it's so complex, but it is not. To realize I'm free, I'm free. The mind is quiet, full of peace. In this moment, just as it is, with no mental interference, no nothing. It just all drops away. It no longer has power over you. Because when you're trapped in these mental stories, you're giving your power to those stories. And those stories are not the truth. We are the one beyond stories. We are the one that never was born, never dies. We are the essence within us, the spirit, the self, whatever you wish to call it. It's beyond definition, beyond labels, but just feeling this peace in this moment, just as it is. To let it all go, to realize the body does what the body does, the mind does what the mind does, but they're just temporary. For myself is eternal. It is full of love, full of peace. So just relaxing here. So I haven't been paying attention to the time for the talk. So if we're in the mood here, we can just drop right into this dissolving meditation. And this feels right now. Let's just dissolve all this. To be quiet, to let go of any routines, any rituals, any ways to sit, to breathe. Maybe close your eyes to remove the external stimulations and just be here. So realize I am love. I am peace. I am. If the mind gets busy, do not judge. Come back to feeling your feet, feeling your heartbeat. There's no rules. Just relax. There's nothing to do. We're just letting it all go. Just keep feeling the peace, the quietness. Notice how the mind wants to run away. It wants to distract. It wants to be busy. We're letting all this go. We're letting it all dissolve to reveal the self that I am love. I am peace. I am. So we want to ease back into this human experience, to open your eyes whenever the time feels right, maybe to stretch your arms out, just really coming back fully into the body, that we are here for the human experience, but we are no longer bound by our head trash, these stories, these demands. We are free. Have always been free. We dance in the self, knowing all is well. Everything's unfolding as it needs to unfold. No worries, no stress. For these are not of the self. Worry, stress, anxiety, poor finances, poor health are byproducts of a busy mind. And we are not that mind. We are free. We are perfect spirit, not locked into anything. We are liberated. Celebrate life as it is, as we come back.